we have so many low-hanging fruits. It's not difficult to do. And if you can fix all that PMX has to do is have the courage to do it and to go and implement that, then I think you can do all the reforms as needed. Because I've read the Buku Jingga juga. I read the Yellow Book. I read all the promises being made.
Right.
You haven't implemented many of those things.
Okay, we are having our first episode of Overtime, which is basically Lebih Masa, but in English. So today we'll be having a special guest, also a former minister and a former current podcaster. Yes.
Of course, since we're launching an English edition, of course, we needed someone whose career spans boardrooms, policy rooms, and now even podcast studio lah.
Yes.
All right. So again, as what Nick has explained, this is an English spin-off episode.
Yes.
Yes, Overtime.
Series, yeah.
So
series.
of course, today we're joined by a man often known as Malaysia's turnaround specialist. So we like to say hello to Dato Sri Idris Jala.
Hi, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So as a fellow podcaster yourself, before we get to know you even better, because I'm actually low-key fangirling right now. I love your podcast. I won't say that I'm a follower and listener. I would say I am a subscriber.
Oh, wow.
Because we need subscribers, okay? So before we begin, don't forget to subscribe.
Yep.
Since this is will be our very first spin-off English episode.
Yep.
Subscribe and follow.
Yeah.
So, Dato Sri, welcome to our studio. Your studio is very convenient. I heard it's in your own house.
Absolutely. We just have it in our house for convenience. So we can do it at night, in the morning, or during the day when we feel it's most convenient to do.
Yeah. And you're doing it with your son.
And do it with my son.
Yeah.
And it's a one-man show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he does the video, he does the editing, and everything's done by him.
Yeah.
Only lately we discovered that the sound was a problem with guests who go away from the microphone and come near modulating the sound. We needed a sound engineer. But he doesn't even come to the house.
Oh, okay.
Leon sent it to him virtually.
All right.
He edits it and sends it back. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't even see the guy.
Right, amazing. So in which episode that you realized that it was a sound that was quite a problem?
Yeah, it was the half of the episodes when we were there. I think the 40th episode.
But I wouldn't believe that it's only a one-man show. You know?
It's a one-man
Because
show.
everything looks very, very professional, very nice.
Well, Leon did a degree in film studies.
Okay.
That explains it. So,
So he produced as well?
yeah.
But how did the idea came about to do that?
Well, it came like this. In the year 2024, I wanted to take time out from work. And I told myself I worked for 42 years of my life since I graduated. Why don't I take one whole year so that my wife and I can journey together for one whole year? I don't do any work.
Yeah.
We can do things that we both want to do together. And so I told Leon, why don't you become the interim chairman for the company while I go away? I told him, run the company. I appointed 2 people to become joint managing directors. One is Ida, another one is Rizwan. So you become the interim chairman and don't disturb me. Don't WhatsApp me. Don't email me. So I'm just taking off. He said, no, I'm not interested. I spent 2 weeks convincing him.
Right.
And finally he said, okay, Dad, on one condition. What is the condition? We do a weekly podcast.
Okay.
At that time, I didn't know what a podcast was. So what is a podcast?
Yeah.
And he told me, watch Diary of a CEO.
Yes.
Then we watched Diary of CEO. Then I became convinced, okay. So that's how we did it because it was a deal between me. I want to take time out. But he said only on one condition we'll do a podcast. That's what happened.
So this is the price of it.
But he's rather smart and you cannot go so far because you are somewhat tied to the podcast, right?
Yeah, that's right. But that was good because when I asked him why did he want to do that, he said, well, if you want me to do your job, I better learn what's going on in your head.
Okay.
So though we do subjects that are related to the work, and it's almost like me handing over to him.
Yeah.
Right. So the name, The Game of Impossible, was it your idea or?
it had always been my obsession.
Right.
And I always like to do things that I consider impossible. Let me define what I mean by game or impossible. That means you set a target that is impossible to achieve based on the current way of doing it. But that target can be achieved if you come with a different way how to do it and completely innovating a new way how to do it. It's not something that's, for example, if you say, I'm a human being, I now want to fly. Of course, that's physically not possible. Even if you change the way in which you do it, unless you fly plane lah.
Yeah.
But the point is this, the target must be doable based on a different way how to do it.
Yeah.
But if you keep on doing the same way in which you do it, you definitely can't. That has
It's
always
insanity, right?
it's correct, insanity. And that is why I love the idea of the game, The Impossible. And so when we came up with the name, Leon had a couple of different ones that he put out there. I suggested the game, The Impossible. He jumped at it. That's the one he said.
Right. So you had like a list. So
We had a list.
all right. Amazing, amazing. So the first few episodes was just the two of you, and then suddenly you've also included guests as well.
Yes, indeed.
And of course, you have done a lot of impossible things, I must say. But before that, we would love to hear about your childhood. You are a Kelabit boy
Yes.
from Bario. I think most of us here only know Beras Bario for that matter. But I've seen a lot of influencers now are actually promoting Bario.
Yes.
They have already there, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. So as a Kelabit, it's a relatively a very small indigenous group in Sarawak. So I would love to listen, like, how was your childhood like? How can you, coming from a very small rural area and look at you now,
Side,
right?
yeah. I think if we have listeners from KL, Kuching even, or Penang, JB, they cannot
They couldn't even imagine.
It is, yeah.
To be clear, Bario, I would say probably one of the most remote, if not the most remote place in the whole of Malaysia lah.
Yeah.
Bario is next to the Kalimantan border. When I grew up as a kid, to get to the nearest town, which is Marudi, it will take us altogether about 2 weeks, 1 week by boat, and 1 week walking in the jungle. That's how remote it was. So when I grew up at that environment, we didn't see the world beyond the mountains. And we were stuck there. And you may remember a little bit of history. You're both very young. Huh? In the year 1962 to 1966, we had the Indonesian confrontation.
Yep.
And so it was an armed and political conflict between Indonesia against Malaysia. So the British soldiers were in my village. They were the SAS, they were in my village. And I remember seeing them, the big aeroplanes dropping parachute provisions for them. And they were there. And we could see that they were very different from the
Right.
Kelabits. And they smoked cigarette. They ate different food,
Yeah.
and they watched movies. I remember there was an open field. The open field, there were barbed wires around it. Huge screen that they're showing. The soldiers were watching the movies from within the barbed wire, and we could watch the movie from behind the screen. And I remember clearly, one movie was about Elvis Presley.
Okay.
And I saw the movie from the other side of the screen.
Right.
Years later, when I went to town, I saw the same movie and I wondered, how come he's left-handed?
Because it's the other way. Because they were watching from behind the screen.
Right.
But like the moral of the story was, the soldiers told me, there is a world beyond the mountains. And to see that world beyond the mountain, the one you see in the movie, you must pass your exams. And that was the motivation for me and my friends. All of us really swear that we must pass the exam to see the world beyond the mountains.
But for primary school, was there a school in your village?
Yes, there was a school in my village. So primary school was in my village. Form 1 to Form 3 was also in my village.
Right.
So I only left town when I was 15 years old to Marudi boarding school. But the motivation to pass primary 6 exam, which we call Sarawak junior exams,
Right.
was just wanting to see that world beyond the mountain. That was the motivation. I can remember very clearly at that time, if I had failed the exam, it felt like, I would say, close to consigning yourself to death. It was so important to see the world beyond because we were so remote.
Yeah.
Right.
So even books must be very limited.
Yeah, I volunteered to be a librarian. Why? Because I wanted to be the first person to read the book
Yeah.
when it came. So when the book came, like King Solomon's Mine, we will read the book and everybody said that book is good and everybody queue up to read the same book. And so we read many books. And so I was an avid reader up to the time when I was varsity as well.
Right. But you are an amazing orator, Dato Sri. I love listening to you, telling stories. Is that somewhat, sort of like is it like a Kelabit thing where you guys get together and then tell stories?
My dad was a storyteller.
Right.
And the way people do it in the village is they go hunting during the day, catch a deer or wild boar, and then put it over the fire. And an elderly person will sit down there and tell epic stories, real long stories into the night.
And these are all memorized, right?
Memorized. And would you believe it? When they tell those stories, they come in rhyme and rhythm.
Oh, amazing.
These are like, some of you may remember the long epic story, Rustam and Shorab. Very similar. Rhyme and rhythm. So they will tell the story from maybe 8 p.m. close to 11. And then the story isn't finished. Then that's episode 1. Turn up tomorrow for episode 2.
Like
Go
a telenovela.
Go cliffhanger one.
Really incredible.
Right.
And there is one particular guy who people swear he had the gift of telling stories. But there's an argument that people thought that he had been possessed. It's like a radio station because his stories are original. Like when my dad tell a story, it's story that's told by many people.
Yes.
But this guy, all his stories are original and never to be repeated. He will not repeat them because he wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And so he tells a story. He's like switching to a channel and the story will pour through him and it comes out. And he will never remember that story. But it's incredible storyteller.
But other than you had the soldiers and all that, did you have role models who went outside the village, who went to town? People who were in the church or school or I don't know. Yeah, from your own orang kampung.
Well, many people do. My dad, we all go to town and I followed them on one of the expedition to town. But my dad was an early role model because he was one of the pioneer teachers. So my grandfather from my dad's side was the headman. But he felt the soldiers told him how important education was. See, he volunteered to be a teacher. So he went to Batu Lintang, became a teacher, and he went to Sri Lanka in those days called Ceylon. And to learn, he had long hair, he had still all the stuff, all the headgear. I don't know how he survived. But nonetheless, he became a pioneer teacher. He opened most of the rural schools in the village and in outside village. So my dad was one of those guys that told us how important education was. Our tribe, the Kelabit tribe, is only about 7,000 people in the whole world.
Right.
But I would say there was a small study done. Degree holders per capita out of 7,000 is probably the most number of degree holders in Malaysia for a race or an ethnic group.
Right.
I don't know how many there are. We even have one of the judges in our court of appeal, Supang Lian, is from my village.
Okay.
Many lawyers, many doctors, etc. there. Simply because you know why? We were stuck in that trap in that small village. The only passport out from it was education.
Yeah.
And the compelling reason was that.
So this is like Malcolm Gladwell's outliers. Why certain groups do well and But so when you went to Marudi, it was not. I mean, you've been to Marudi before, right?
Yes,
as a child.
I've been to.
So you went to do your Form 4, Form 5 in
Marudi.
Okay, Form 6.
And then Form 6 in Miri.
In Miri, okay.
And then after Form 6, I went to USM.
So that was your first trip to
Big town.
Semenanjung. Yeah.
First trip to Semenanjung and to a big town. Lah.
Penang, yeah.
Penang was a big town.
Yeah, yeah. So how was that?
It was a big transition.
This was 70...
Yeah, I was there in 78.
Okay.
I went in 1978. Graduated in 1982. But it was really incredible that experience, because it was the first time I saw a very different world from Sarawak. For example, I never saw so many Indians in my life. Because there's so few Indians in Sarawak.
Yeah.
You can count them. You know them by name. There's 1 or 2 Sikhs in Miri, but you never see so many Indians. But Chinese, of course, in Sarawak as well. So it was first time I really saw the real fabric of Semenanjung lah. And the food is different too. And I had a huge difficulty with Bahasa.
Right.
Because I studied 100% English medium.
Okay.
And so when I went to USM, it was a struggle for me.
This was the start of the national language.
Yeah, in many sense, many of the lecturers also struggle. There was one lecturer who really struggled, and he's retired now. Latif Kamaluddin. He had very long hair. He's got beard. His father, I think, his father is Malay. His father is Hungarian, but the mother is Malay. He had long hair and he shaved his head. He had difficulty with the language because so it doesn't really matter because the books are 100% in English.
Yeah.
Although I didn't follow the lectures, but I could pick it up by reading lah.
You read what course?
I did development studies and also minored in management.
Okay.
And so development economics basically.
All right.
Okay.
That was what I did.
So apart from the language and the food, what are other perhaps your culture shocks that you had when you went to USM?
The first thing was I found the food very hot.
Okay.
Really very hot. But it was the first time I really began to understand how nice it is when it's hot, but you get used to it lah. But because in Sarawak, my tribe, we hardly put chili in our food. When I grew up as a kid, chili is hardly used in any of our dishes.
I see.
So when I went there, it was I get to be used to the fact that everything they put curry, they put chili into it. But I got to love it in the end lah.
Yeah.
You know, but fantastic. We had a great time. Nasi kanda was very, very nice. We had this game. When it rains in the night, we love it because everybody will gather around and play carom.
Okay.
And we used to play carom. And the loser of the game, his job is to go on the motorbike in the rain without a raincoat, must go to Craven A, drive all the way to town to get roti canai for everybody. So the punishment is you must drive on your motorbike, get the roti canai in the rain, and pay for it for everybody. So when we play carom, I can tell you, when you are the last 2% left, your hand shaking.
Have you ever lost? Have you ever?
Oh yeah, twice I lost.
Okay.
I'm not a very good player. You know, there's this distinguished professor Raja Rasia at MU.
Yes.
He never went.
Okay.
That guy is a champion carom. So if you're listening out there, Professor Raja Rasia, and you never lost any of those matches, he's fantastic carom player.
Okay.
But we love that we only play that game when it rains at night.
Right.
Something new.
So also an interesting thing happened as well. You met your wife.
Yes, we did.
Datin Sri Pangan you.
Yeah.
So I heard it was the love at first sight.
Yeah, love at first sight. I remember clearly when I saw her, I said, wow, this is the woman I really am interested in.
She's from Semenanjung.
Yes, from KL.
Okay.
But I saw her for 1 week. Then I disappeared for 3 months because there was a competition. And if you win the competition, you go for Japan Airlines scholarship to Tokyo. So I wanted to win that competition. So they said there'll be one representative from USM, one from MU, one from UKM and all the universities. So I desperately wanted to win it. So I won it. So I disappeared. I went to Tokyo,
Right.
to Sophia University for 3 months actually. During the 3 months, I couldn't wait to come back and to go look for this girl
Without internet those days. Huh?
without internet.
So you didn't write any letters?
No letters
okay.
like that. But it was a wonderful time.
Right,
I had
right.
a great time in Tokyo. They gave us money. It was a Japan Airlines scholarship. Studied at Sophia University.
So your first time overseas?
First time overseas. Wonderful. That was the years when the whole world was looking at Japan.
Yeah.
When Tun Mahathir started the Look East policy.
Mm.
I can tell you the whole world was just enchanted with Japan. And I was there as a student during that peak period.
Mm.
He was a professor at the university called Professor Ballon.
Mm.
And he taught us about international business in Japan and Japanese management. It was wonderful. I spent 3 solid months there. I'm convinced, Nani, I'm the first Malaysian to have brought a Sony Walkman to Malaysia because
Right.
that was period when Sony just released a Walkman. When I brought it home, nobody else had one.
So
And I was, all the girls wanted to sit on my motorbike to listen to including my wife.
Right.
that's the secret lah. So for those listening who do not understand what that is, those days you had a cassette and
Yes.
it's a mobile cassette player.
Yeah.
And it was my first thing in school, in boarding school. The first thing I got was a Walkman.
So
Oh,
what
it was the thing.
The thing, yeah, correct.
what was the music that you were listening
Well,
to?
I was listening to Blind Faith by Eric Clapton when he
Right.
left the Cream, and then so I had that. I had just enough money to buy 2 cassettes. One was
That's on the loop.
Yeah, there was on the loop. The other one it was the Billy Joel's.
Right.
Billy Joel's. It was The Stranger, I think that particular one. The song Vienna was. I really loved that song there.
Right.
So you already at that time playing music
Yes, I was playing music.
from your kampung or?
At Kampong, we were playing very simple kind of songs in church. My first guitar was a guitar made of tin. Would you believe it? There were some Indonesian soldiers, not soldiers, workers that came out there, cut 2 plywood with the shape and put the curve around it from tin lah. So that was my first guitar.
Okay.
So when we went to USM, there we formed a band. It's called Refugees. Those were the days during
All Sarawakians.
all Saraukian.
Okay.
And we played good stuff. And
In the
they were
concert.
very heavy. Very heavy. We were into Grand Funk, Railroad. We were into Uriah Heep, Deep Purple. They're really heavy stuff. But in Form 6, we had a different band. We call it Volcanic Eruptions. You can see how loud we were. It was really good. I was a prefect as well.
Okay.
When we were in Form 6. I told, on Monday, the headmaster told me, Kwasa head, chairman of the prefectorial board in Form 6. He said, Idris, can you tell me how can I convince the students to turn up early for our school assembly on Monday? Because we're always late. And so I went back and told him after a week, I know how to get them to come early. If you allow me, you put some equipment for nice music we put out there. I will play some rock music before. I can tell you they will be there. So we had some huge amplifiers that we put out there and we played many, many nice songs. And I remember the one we played and on Sunday was, Monday was Don't Let Me Down.
Okay.
And then we said Hotel California.
Nice.
I can tell you, their students were in the hall 30 minutes or 1 hour before school assembly.
Concert. Who would want to miss that?
Yeah. So everybody was in the hall long before the teachers were there. So that was the
trick, yeah?
The
Oh,
trick lah.
amazing
After that, then we
strategy.
turned, because they were guitar amplifiers, then we formed a band. We had good fun lah.
Right.
Anyway, we have, I think that was a lot of learning about how you grew up, Dato Sri. And I think a lot more. After this will be about your working career and then going into cabinet and of course what you're doing now. But anyway, I'm sure that there are a lot of those who are tuning in to Overtime, which is on Lebih Masa for the first time. This is our first English product or English episode. So please subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, sure. So we shall have a break now. We will be right back. All right, we are back. Overtime, a spin-off from Lebih Masa. I'm very sure all of you are enjoying our first part. So coming back to on our second part with Dato Sri Idris Jala, we're going to talk more about how you became a corporate man. After university, you joined Shell and later Malaysian Airlines, right? So how did that happen? Because before we started our podcast, you said you didn't even plan to work at Shell. So but then you spent
to do to be a musician or
No, actually, I wanted to be a lecturer by that time because that year I love academics. I came out in that graduating year as a top student, so I won the Vision Core Student Award, and our dean was Kamal Saleh, who was the late Kamal Saleh. He said to me, Idris, I really want you to become a lecturer, and we will give you a scholarship to do your master's and PhD in Pennsylvania. And so I agreed. So it was my final year. All I wanted to do was be a lecturer. That was it. On my final day of varsity, I was going to go back to Miri. I saw an advertisement in the newspaper, and the advertisement from Shell. They said, if you come for the interview, we'll pay for your ticket. All I wanted was a ticket because I needed to go home, you see.
Okay.
So I don't have
without paying for it.
Without paying for it. So I wrote the most cocky letter of my life. Dear sir, I'm the man you're looking for. Anyway, I got the ticket.
Right.
Since I'm back, my place there, it was June 1982. And Pennsylvania, they were only starting in September.
Okay.
So I got nothing to do. I might as well do the job.
Right.
I got the job. I did it.
So it's
for
Shell Miri.
Shell Miri. I did it for 3 months. Then I resigned.
Okay.
Said, why are you resigning? He said, I want to go and do my master's and PhD. Then our managing director said, you were good actually, Idris. We want you to stay. We'll counter offer you. We will send you to do your master's, but no PhD. And that was it. He negotiated for me to stay. The joke was, he said, we like you, but we don't like your hair. I had long hair, it was a rock star.
Yeah.
But in any case, that's how I didn't go. Just because I wanted my ticket, I stayed in Shell for 23 years.
23 years.
That was a very effective advertisement.
Yeah, very, very.
Right.
But then, what do you call that? But how was it at Shell? I mean, I obviously it's a big company. It's known for its corporate culture, being an MNC and all that. But what was it when your experience working in Shell?
Shell is an incredible company. If you want to learn, that sky's the limit, because it's a company that allows you to do many different things. I went to sales, I was in retail marketing, and I did LPG upstream and the downstream side of the business. I was into human resource, and I went to work in Sri Lanka, I will work in Holland, I work in London.
Right.
And when I was in London, I was covering 100 over countries
Right.
as vice president for business development and retail. So it gave me so much exposure and learning.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have asked for a better opportunity to learn. And they gave me broadening experience, different cultures. It was tremendous learning for me. So that was, I look back at my life, corporate life. The Shell grounding was tremendous. Your sister worked with me in Shell Middle Distillates. It was a team when we were there. Company lost 10 years of loss making.
Right.
And the company simply told me, Idris, you the managing director, work with this team, turn it around. And they gave us almost a blank sheet of paper. Do anything you can do with it to turn it around. In 6 months, we made a profit. In the third year, it's the most profitable company. by return on investment in corporate Malaysia together with Maxis, and we made 509 million net profit after tax in my third year there. And so, but they basically gave me a blank check how to go and do it. I mean, we did crazy stuff like selling our kerosene as barbecue lighter. Whoever would dream of doing something like that? And we started selling our diesel as drilling fluid. You know who our first customer? It wasn't Shell. It was Petronas.
Right.
Okay.
So we sold our product not to Shell, but to Petronas.
Yeah.
Next customer was Exxon. Still not Shell. Next customer was Chevron. Still not Shell. But the point was, we were allowed to do whatever is needed to turn it around. I had a free hand to figure out what to do with it. So it was marvelous. It was really very exciting.
So,
10 years.
So how was the story of you being recruited to the other difficult job then, to run MAS?
Yeah, that was interesting. So I woke up on a Saturday morning. Those days there was BlackBerry. You may remember it's dead now. I turned out to BlackBerry and I saw a message from a gentleman I never met before. His name was Dato Azman Mokhtar, not Tan Sri then. So he said, we would like you to come and join us in this. Revolution was the word he used.
Wow.
And so we are trying to transform the government-linked companies. And this is a revolution set by Patla at that time. So I called my friends who were around. I said, who is this guy? Azman Mokhtar. He's quite somebody. I met up with him. So he spent maybe about 6 months trying to convince me. I said, no, I'm not interested. So very long time he tried to do that.
So you were with Shell at that time?
I was with Shell. So why are you not interested? I said, I read a bit more about GLCs. From what I've read, they will never give you a free hand to do what is needed. So he then said, how can I convince you that we will give you a free hand? Can you arrange for me a meeting to see the Prime Minister? I said, sure, he said. So I met up with Patla. I asked him one question. Will you give me the free hand to do what's needed to turn around? He said, yes. Are there any conditions? He said, of course there are conditions. Like what? Depends on what you want to do. Then I told him that we were going to reduce our staff by 3,000. He said, on condition there's no strike, no go slow. He said, sure. I guarantee you there will be no strike, there no go. How would you guarantee that? Because I will not make anybody forcibly redundant. I will make them volunteer, the ones who want to go. We pay them good money who volunteer to go. Nobody will go on strike. I'll tell the union, if you don't want to go, don't fill the form. Habis cerita dah. But if you fill the form, that means you want to go. So those were conditions. But because he was a politician, I discounted 50% of what he promised. I knew that things he will allow me to do. But with 50%, what he promised, I could feel that was good enough. And I had one condition. I told him, would you please come and introduce me in my first town hall meeting? He looked at me, he said, no.
Who introduced you?
Patla.
Oh, Patla.
Yeah. He said, no. CEO said, ask the Prime Minister to come introduce me. Why do you want to do that? He asked me. Because I want you to tell them that you are giving me free hand to go and do it. I want them to believe that this is the case. So on the first day when I turned up in my job, there were 900 people at our town hall meeting. Then he introduced me. Of course, we discussed what is it he was going to say. I told him 2 messages. The first message, no bailout. The government is not going to spend any money giving to Malaysia Airlines to bail you out. The second message is Idris Jala is coming here like a head of the family. You have a family problem to solve. You and Idris Jala will solve this problem by yourself, not the government.
This is probably, you're probably the few CEOs that have been introduced by the Prime Minister.
Yeah. And at that time, I was the only one. He told me,
Probably,
"You don't." But I said, well, I'm not interested in the job. You see?
Yeah.
And so he came to do that. But credit to him, he really stuck with it. He gave me the free hand to do what we needed to do. Of course, about 50% discount. Lah. That was good enough.
Yeah.
And that was the starting point. It was fantastic. And I also saw at that time, Tan Sri Yaakob. Yeah, he was MK2
Yeah.
at that time. It was fantastic. Great opportunity, and I learned so much from it.
But what if you can share? Because when we were growing up in
Yes.
the 1980s,
Yeah.
the days of arwah Tan Sri Aziz,
Yes.
Mars was flying high.
Oh, yes.
Literally flying high. So what happened? It was really big. It was one of the best airlines in the world. What happened that led it to where it was when you came over? It took over. Yeah.
So let me say the good thing that was still there. Our product was good. Our airlines, the aircraft were good. The service was great because our cabin crew were very, very, very good. So there's nothing wrong with the product. And what was the problem was our cost has ballooned. That's one. And secondly, we were flying to an inefficient network. We were flying to routes that had made no sense. And so we were flying to routes that the government said, fly there. For example, going to Buenos Aires. There was no particular reason for us to fly to Buenos Aires. And there was also no reason for us from a load standpoint to fly flight from Kuching to Perth. And so when we looked at the number of passengers on each flight for that particular segment, there were about 18 passengers on the plane. When we looked at them, it was exactly the same people because they bought houses in Perth, they were Sarawakian, and there's no way you can make money from doing it. So our network was inefficient. And so we had to figure out how to sort out that. So the cost was a big one, plus an inefficient network. Figuring out, reconfiguring the network was very important. But the product was good, and the service was great. So fixing that was the key thing. So dynamic pricing was the most important thing to increase the yield for us after we fix all those issues. So it was not too difficult to solve in my view.
I see.
But there's a lot of attention to detail.
Right.
And to be clear, during Tan Sri Aziz's time, people don't change the price, the fares on an hourly basis. The dynamism in pricing never existed in those days. Today, all airlines change price almost hourly basis. So if you're not on top of it, you lose money. I would say today for all listeners, the most important lever to pull to turn around an airline is dynamic pricing. When to lower the fare, when to increase the fare, hour by hour. That is the key. And if you don't know how to do that, you will lose money. And so, and let me say something that people will think I was crazy. I think I'm the only CEO of an airline in the world today that produce daily profit and loss statement. That means every individual flight, every flight you have a P&L. Most airlines would have a route profit and loss statement, like Kuala Lumpur, London. Take all the flights during the year, that become a route profit and loss statement. Mine was a daily P&L. And so that was what we did. And when we started to do that, we had tremendous ability to make changes. For example, we know that on a Wednesday, next week, the same flight, every day on Wednesday from Kuala Lumpur to Miri, our load factor was already less than 20%. Of course, you lose money. Then we came with the almost ridiculous idea of having zero fare. People thought I was crazy. I wasn't crazy because if we tell passengers, don't go on Malaysia on AirAsia, come on our flight, you pay nothing for the fares. You only pay for fuel surcharge and admin fee, which Tony also charged. So they come over to join us, but when they go Miri, they have to come back, right? When you come back, then you pay full fare. That was the trick, is it? Because that flight to Miri, the load factor was less than 20%. So what we were doing was at least reducing our loss But we are then recouping our profit on return. And so when we were doing this, if you Google name Idris Jala, go to YouTube, Idris Jala, zero fare. There came up the primetime news that we were offering 1 million seats on zero fare. 1 million, huh? But we knew exactly which flight we were putting that on. You do not put that on the eve of Christmas, on Hari Raya, on Chinese New Year, because those were full flights.
Anyway, yeah.
They were precisely where the load factor was below 30%. And we only did one way, not two ways. That was detailed stuff that we were doing. But if you have no attention to detail, you don't know flight P&L, you cannot do it. We used to lose money, 20 million ringgit flying to London a year. When we broke down the P&L, we discovered the same 2 flights to London was making money every day for the whole year, but the same 2 flights was losing money every day for the whole year. So we knew the solution was get rid of those 2 flights, and the very next day we were profitable. And we would never have known that if we don't have a daily
P&L.
individual profit and loss statement. That's an example.
Right. Of course, transforming
Yeah.
a big, it was a big way like mass. Of course, it required a lot of changes at all levels, right? So how do you win over employees and unions? Of course, were there resistance?
Oh,
right?
When I announced on my first week there that we were going to reduce 3,000 people, of course the union jumped. And Alias Aziz was the president of the MASU, called the largest union there.
They have how many unions?
We had at that time the 48 unions.
Wow, that's a lot.
Because every place, Manchester had a union, mana-mana, you had the engineers union, cabin crew union. Everybody got union.
TNB has 6. I thought that's a lot
They
already.
had
Oh,
48.
okay.
Because the destination itself, they have a union there. So we had many unions, but the biggest one was MASU, that's a cabin crew union. So he came to me and he said, I heard that you are planning to reduce manpower and we are going to go on strike. What's the point he used in the beginning, right from beginning?
Yeah.
And I told him, Alias, this is not forced redundancy. People are going to have the opportunity to make a choice. And if you don't want to go, don't fill the form. Jangan isi borang. Habis cerita dah.
Right.
So he said, if you want to go, you fill the form. But if you're a cabin crew, I guarantee you the answer is no. Because we don't have enough cabin crew. And if you are a pilot, if you fill the form, the answer is also no. If you're an engineer, the answer is no.
Right.
But if you work in marketing, in sales, in head office, the answer is yes.
Right.
And so, okay. So I had tea with him in my office and I explained to him. And he was a very big advocate. Then I told him, I opened the books. I said, Alias, we have only 2.5 months of cash. I show you, in 2.5 months, if we don't cut our costs, we have no money to pay salary, no money to pay for fuel. We have to ground all the ground. We basically bankrupt. I showed him the books. And these are audited. So he said he understood. Where are you going to have the money to pay redundancy? I said, I'm selling the building.
Okay, so that's the...
I sold the building for 130 million ringgit.
Was it politically sensitive?
Very sensitive. Very, very sensitive. I had to go and convince Pala, Minister of Finance, because I said, look, I don't have money to pay any of these people on voluntary severance. No banks will lend us any money because we're nearly bankrupt. No banks would lend us money. The only way we could pay for the redundancy was sell the building. Not only did I want to sell the building, but we only 2.5 months of cash. So if I sell the building for 130 million ringgit, I paid for redundancy, I extended the runway for another 3 months. So I needed at least 6 months to learn how to fix the airline. I have never worked in an airlines before. If you give me only 2.5 months, we'll be dead. So they agreed, Pala agreed.
The real game of impossible.
So we went out and sold it. Everybody jumping up and down. I remember my good friend, Dato Rashid. He was the commercial director, very nice man. He reported to me, he said, he came to my room, in terms of nice resistance.
Okay.
He said, boss, I bought my house in Ampang because it's very near to the office. Now you're selling the building. Every day I have to now drive to the airport. That's not fair, he said. Yeah, I told him, Dato Rashid, I understand it's not fair, but we have no choice. Again, when I opened the book, I showed him how much runway we have. No choice. And I showed him the detail. The key here is that don't shy away from showing the facts to the people. When I showed the facts, Dato Rashid, that's very senior guy, understood it. The junior guy who was a union leader understood it as well. But don't shy away. Tell the facts as it is. Confront the facts and tell them, look, I came here to fix this. If you tell me you don't do it, I'm a surgeon. You come to me. If I then say the only way I could heal you as a patient, I have to do a surgery, you must accept lah.
Yeah.
I'm a surgeon. You tell me, give Panadol, tak boleh.
Show the facts and
Show the facts, must show the facts. And they came around it. I mean, they really were rallying behind it. It was fantastic.
But Dato Sri, right? After you left, then Mas went through some other challenges.
Yes, they did.
What do you call that? The MH70, 370, MH17, and so on and so forth. And now recently, Captain Izham I think is retiring or just
Retiring.
Yeah. How do you see Mas now? I mean, after you left for 15 years?
Yeah.
Or so? Yeah.
I think after I left, there was, if you remember, I finished my first 3 years there. We call it the business turnaround plan. Then I came with a business transformation plan Mark II.
Okay.
In that, I think, I can't remember the page. There was, I think, page 139, if I'm not mistaken. I predicted until and if Malaysia Airlines does not follow this, in 3 years, it will have its biggest loss in corporate history. Why did I say that? It's because we know exactly the number of aircraft being ordered by all the airlines in Asia Pacific. And they all order from Airbus and Boeing. The data is known. When those aircraft are being ordered, there was going to be overcapacity in Asia Pacific. We knew it. The margins will come down. And so when margins come down, then you cannot recover it through the fares. So you will lose money until and unless you change it. So my vision was that we wanted to create a 5-star value service airline. That means an airline that has low cost but full serve. People say that's not possible. Of course it's possible. For example, how do you make sure that the food is cheap, but yet people like it? For example, we knew that for breakfast from Kuala Lumpur to Hong Kong, what do they really want? It's actually porridge. What is porridge? It's just boiled rice, It's so cheap. But most people don't like to do that. Why do they want to have a common breakfast that is very full continental breakfast? Mahal je. But if you are focusing on what the customers want, it may mean that actually the cost is lower, customer satisfaction is high. So, but don't give congee porridge to Australians from Kuala Lumpur to Perth. They'll kill you with it. But you must look at the customer segment and tell her, when you start to do that, you'll find you can reduce costs, but at the same time, full satisfaction. And so, in every step of the way, we call it finding the sweet spot. And I have said before, if we play that game of impossible, we will make a lot of money, but if we don't do it, by the 3 years from now, Mas will lose money. The biggest loss in corporate history. What I predicted came true. And but of course, it made it even worse because of the two accidents.
Yeah.
No airline in the history of aviation have lost 2 aircraft within 1 year. It's the first time in history. And so that has been bad. But I have not been able to follow exactly I've only heard about what's been going on. Apparently, they've done great job under Captain Izam. But because they're no longer publicly listed, so we don't see it. In my time, it was publicly listed. So every quarter, we see the results. What I hear is that Captain Izam has done a great job in pulling it through. I knew him because he was a really good man when I was then. Tengku Azmil and we identified him as a future potential leader. And we got him out from just being a pilot to be in charge of fleet. He was arranging fleet management. He was the guy that was doing that. That was a managerial job that we gave to Captain Izam when he was a budding pilot.
Yeah,
But we saw the potential in the man then, very early on at that time.
All right, so Dr. Sri, of course, Turnover MAS was a success story. It's still been talked about now, but of course, people also credit you as the transformation guru and the big fast results, or BFR. I heard you have copyrighted, right? It's copyrighted.
That's right.
Can you tell us more about it, because it's really catchy. Have you always been holding on to these 8 steps to this BFR?
Yeah, the name BFR came a little later, but the idea has always been with me, although I didn't have a brain for it. I grew up with my father, who always wanted to get things done quickly. And he wanted to make it fast. And he wanted to make it big. And that idea was there since I was a kid.
Right.
And the term that he used was the word katui. Katui is a Kelabit word for burning desire to win.
Right.
And in Hokkien, there is a word for it. It's called kiasu.
Okay.
It's in the Oxford English Dictionary.
Right.
Okay.
That means I can something like hate to lose, don't want to lose, kiasu. And that was a starting point. And so over the years when I was in Shell, I began to hone it into many steps.
Right.
So I put something together when I was in Sri Lanka, in London, and in Holland, and in Malaysia. I coined them. That's how I came with the 8 step and the 6 secret. And they were the methods that I use and hone over time.
Right.
So I've already put them onto, if you like, copyrighted them.
Nice.
Big, fast result. So when I went to Malaysia Airlines, the interesting thing was not planned. The car they gave to me was BFR 33. I didn't bid for that number, but it was there.
Right.
So when I finished my time there, I told them, can you please give me one gift? I want that number plate. I don't, of course, minus the car.
Yeah.
I just wanted that number plate. So I have that number plate, BFR 33.
Okay.
And so very interesting thing.
Right.
That's how it started.
But okay, so you went from MNC.
Yeah.
Then you went to GLC.
Yeah.
Right? Then you joined government. And that is, like you said, I mean, for me, Dato Sri, unfortunately, I hitched myself to this political bandwagon since I graduated pretty much. So I don't really have a choice. But for you, right, you have all these options, which are, I would say, at least GLC, you still have, decent pay, less scrutiny, although some political pressures. But when you go into government, then you're really jumping into the deep end of the pool. So how did that happen? And what convinced you to join cabinet?
Frankly, it took me a long time to be convinced.
Yeah.
Dato Sri Najib asked me to join the cabinet. I said no to him. And that was April when he started, April 2009. He started his cabinet. I said, I'm not interested. I really don't want, I'm not cut for it. So he asked me only one thing. He said, will you at least attend our cabinet retreat? We're going to have our cabinet retreat when you come there and share your experience with transformation. Sure, when I was in Malaysia Airlines. So when I was there, I turned up at their retreat and then shared my experience. And they had 5 cabinet retreats from April right up to September.
Oh.
It was in September that he then convinced me, again, would you reconsider? By that time, I knew already that quite a number of the ministers were really on board with him, with what they wanted to do. The reason why I said no to him in the beginning was, I don't think your cabinet ministers are on board with you for whatever you want to do. Unless they're on board with you, then forget it. Even as one person, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And so that's how he convinced me. So that's why I joined the cabinet only in September 2009, not in April 2009. But they took a while to convince me to go and do that. Because at that time, I had so much opportunities to go and do different things.
Yeah.
And he said, you've been a minister. I had a huge pay cut from Shell. I had a pay cut to go to Mars. By the way, when I went to Mars, I lost my stock options as well.
Oh.
I lost my awards, my stock awards, and going there. And at that time, when I went to Mars, I had the option. They gave me the choice of becoming the chairman of Shell also, which is what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I had the choice of going down to become CEO of Malaysia Airlines and using a huge pay cut, and then become promoted as a chairman of Shell. I went there because I really wanted the corporate adventure. So the corporate adventure of really wanting to ask, can I do these things that I could do in Shell? Can I apply it to a different sector? And a GLC, I gave myself 50% chance of success. And that was good enough.
Just like the word of
Yeah,
politician.
50%. Okay, let me go and do it. So I went to do it. So why did I take eventually the opportunity to go and become a minister? I also wanted that adventure. Now it's not a corporate adventure. It's a leadership adventure that I was interested in, whether I could do that in a completely different environment. And so, again, I gave myself 50% chance. And I always tell myself, in life, you must be prepared to take risks.
Right.
If you're not prepared to take risks, you will never walk the path of becoming the best version of yourself. I think too often, human beings, we set modest target,
Right.
realistic target that we can outperform. And what is the problem with that? Because we keep doing that, we are definitely consigning ourselves to walk the path of mediocrity. You got to put targets where you have 50% chance of success. Then you have to innovate and find a completely different way how to do it to increase the odds, to improve the possibility that it become 90% chance. And so that is what I like to do, and that was why I was compelled to do it.
What you think are, say, 3 biggest lessons that you did not gain during corporate, MNC, GLC, that you gained during your time in government?
Well, the first thing that I really learned in government was there was no single true north measure. Because in the corporate world, it's very simple, make profit. Simple. But when you come to the government, there's so many criteria for success.
Right.
You can do so many different things. You can argue everything that you want to from a different standpoint and can win the argument.
Right.
And that was something, learning how to balance that,
Yeah.
to deal with stakeholder management. So stakeholder management is key for us to go and do. For example, when we had a huge argument about the MRT, we came up with the idea we must build a mass rapid transit in Kuala Lumpur. Everybody said it cannot be done. And the arguments from the engineers was we had clastic limestones down below. If you build the tunnels there, all the buildings will collapse. But we had to bring the arguments to them. That's not true. And the arguments were there were other cities that had classic limestone and that they didn't collapse, provided you use new technologies.
Yeah.
That's one. Then you dealt with them, remove that. The second one was, how do you find the money to go and do it? People will say, why should you spend more money in the city and not in the rural places? And so you have to win the argument. Otherwise, politically, it's not doable, And so we have to say, well, we're going to spend a most amount of money on rural infrastructure. If you look during my time, the most number of rural roads, the most number of access to electricity in the history of our country was done rural during my time when we were there. And that was simply because we had to tell the populace that we were not just focusing on the urban areas, we also looked at the rural areas. But to do that, you can't do all that without money. That's why I have to rationalize the subsidy. We floated RON 97 to make it move on a monthly basis to market. And we introduced the GST. Because without GST, we ain't going to make the money to go and do this. The money didn't go on trees. And these are difficult things to do.
Yeah.
And so I said to the Prime Minister, if you want to do all these things, you need money to do it.
Right.
and they are painful. You got to go and find a way how to do it. And so convincing them to go and do that was very difficult. I can tell you this, and this is a story not many people know about. I spoke in cabinet about subsidy rationalization, and I told everybody, this is why we are going to do it. These are the reasons behind it. And the facts were laid clearly in cabinet. Everybody agreed. Okay, agreed. But you go and tell the story lah. They said, fine. So we had our whole town hall event. We call it Open Day. I famously went out there and I told everybody, if we do not rationalize subsidy, and if we keep borrowing at the rate we're growing, which was 12.3% at that time, annually, CAGR. And our economy grows at 3.5. By the year 2019, we'll go bankrupt. Whoa, I thought that was known. In cabinet, that was the storyline. Everybody agreed. After I told her in public, my colleagues from the cabinet really wanted to fire me, you know.
Yep.
And so I looked behind looking for support. There was no support. Because the point was, what I wasn't aware was, whatever they said yes there, when it become problematic politically, they changed.
Yeah, cuci tangan lah.
And cuci tangan. And so I became the sacrificial node. To be clear, on that particular day, I actually offered to resign. I went to see the Prime Minister.
Right.
If your cabinet colleagues don't like what I'm doing, and we all agreed at cabinet, I have never said it publicly. First time I'm saying this. I will resign. I told Dato Sri Najib, because I didn't come here for any glory. I didn't come here for salary. I didn't come here for any other thing. So try and make a difference. If you guys are not supportive of this and we've agreed the storyline, I resign tomorrow, you know. And so he said, no, Idris, please stay. And so I stayed lah. So otherwise I would have followed you and I couldn't keluar juga. But so I stayed on to do that. But it was a very difficult time. So I learned a lot. This is one lesson I learned. With politicians, it's important to know what they don't say rather than what they say. So every time when I say unpopular thing we need to do, that when they keep quiet, be careful of this dead silence. The dead silence is the most dangerous thing. When they don't agree with you and they say it openly, that's okay actually. Then you can debate it. If they all keep quiet and they don't tell you, then they're going to allow you to hang.
Right.
That is the lesson learned.
Yeah.
It's important to know what they don't say than what they say.
So that's a lesson when Nani joins the
Right?
cabinet.
Yeah. I'm sitting next to a politician, by the way.
I know.
Right. So looking back, what would you say like the most satisfying achievement lah during your tenure at Pemandu?
Yeah, I would say it was the economic labs that we conducted.
Right.
It was the first time in our history we gathered more than 500 people, locked them in 8 weeks of laboratories concurrently. We asked the private sector, are there any projects that you are prepared to invest money in Malaysia? And if you do, tell us the names of those projects, the nature of those projects, and 3 things I wanted to know. How many jobs is a project creating? Because jobs important. And how much money are you investing in the project? Third, what's the contribution to the gross national income? So we use EBITDA plus employee compensation as proxy. And so after 8 weeks when we did that, the total number of projects that the private sector agreed to commit on was 131. And the total investment from the private sector was 1.4 trillion ringgit.
This is DDI, domestic.
Both DDI
and FDI.
Both. Most of them, 75% of them were DDI, 75%. The most interesting thing was, we then asked them, what help do you need from the government to make sure that this project is realized? Because, you know, in government, they announce the project, but not materialize.
Yeah.
Right.
So we asked them, what are the problems that you encounter and how can we help you? I would say more than 70% of the problems is not about financial issues. They were government bureaucracy.
Right.
At state, local.
Yeah, both federal, state, and municipal. Take the example, one of the projects was St. Regis. Tan Sri Chua Mayu had the money. He had the agreement of St. Regis to build a hotel. He had the land. But he couldn't get the agreement from the government to put it. That project was stalled for 3 or 4 years.
Oh.
And all we need to do was approve it, jalan. So during the lab, which ran for 8 weeks, we gave the approval 2 weeks into the lab. Piling was already started. That's an example.
So the problem was at DBKL.
The problem was various. Both state, DBKL pun ada, federal pun ada, all sorts of different approvals. So these were government bureaucracies. And so the beauty of the lab was, for every project, we brought the government officers, the relevant ministers into the room. And the problems were solved in the room. So that the private sector don't go pillar to post. Try to find solutions to it. Terlalu lama lah. People got fed up.
Yeah,
with the thing. And so we found that to be very interesting. So 1.4 trillion, why I like it, because they were actually implemented. There was over a 10-year period. After 7 years, when we did a review of that work, after 7 years, we actually achieved far more than the original number. That's why you may remember, look at the data. Before we ran the labs, our economy grew, the total investment, private investment, CAGR was 5.5%. After the lab, for the same period, 5 years, it was double,
Right.
almost double, 10.5% CAGR, because of what happened in the lab. So what I realized today is that there are a lot of investors that want to put money in our economy.
Yep.
The problem is realization of that.
Yep.
Because of government bureaucracy, terlalu lama.
Yep.
We have to find a way how to cut that. And frankly speaking, the answer is just next door. Just look at Singapore. Because they are the best in ease of doing business. I have time and again, I've said this when I was a minister. Just take Singapore's model, copy and paste. Itu saja. We just let a few people look at that method and then say, how can we localize this so that it become Malaysians?
Yeah.
Right.
That's all. Nothing so sophisticated.
Yeah.
I mean, to register a company, they do it. You can register a company and get it done within hours. You can pay taxes so fast. Malaysia paying taxes is very complicated, you know. Want to give money to government also difficult. Why? Why make it so difficult?
Yeah.
Government needs money, make it simple lah.
Yeah.
So, construction permitry, we are one of the worst in the world. When you build anything in Malaysia, it takes many months to get my house. We built a house in the Petaling Jaya. It took me 2 years to get approval. My own house, I was a minister. 2 years. The actual construction was 1.5 years. Why does it take 2 years to get approval?
Yeah.
This is totally
And
ridiculous.
this is not a multi-tower. Yeah.
It's a house.
A house.
Yeah.
You know, so this is the problem with most houses, for example, in the world. If it's an approved building plan, all building plan approved in that particular area, there's no need for pre-approval. Most, you just go and build it, get the architect, get engineer, go and do it. You build it.
Yeah.
If it does not meet the specs, no CF is granted.
Correct.
So in our case, you have to go and the pre-approval. Only Malaysia does that lah. I don't know of any country that does that. I imagine it works like this lah. Now I say it's a gripe against the government. It's a simple gripe. That is, imagine you tell a doctor lah, you are a surgeon lah, before you operate on your patient, you need to get approval first from the Ministry of Health before you operate on the patient. The patient would have been dead long time ago. That's why we train you so that you become totally competent. So that you can
make the
you can
decisions,
decide how to go and do it. You don't need to get approval from MOH to go and do it.
And any negligence, you can charge later.
You charge later.
Yeah.
This is exactly so. We don't need the pre-approval. To this day, it's still there. I tried to change this when I was there and I failed. And for the life of me, we have difficulty getting rid of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
That is an example. It's still there.
It is.
But
It is.
having said that, I would say a few things that are going very well. Tan Sri Asih, when he was in charge of immigration, he was the guy credited for making sure that we can get our passport renewed and IC renewed within a day, within hours. Simply because when he says, let's do it, let's find a different way how to do it. And I think we hold a world record in ability to renew a passport and IC within record time. So we can do it if we want to do it.
Yep.
And that's an example when we want to do lah.
Yeah.
But we must want to do lah.
Right. Cannot tak apa lah.
Cannot. The world is so competitive out there. We must be prepared. So I'm very proud of that. In fact, in the year 2014, Bloomberg put me among the top 10 most influential policy makers in the world. I went to see them and asked them why me and why not Obama. And they said, actually, we're not impressed with you, Idris. We're impressed with the methodology.
Right.
That you guys have this lab. You got the best brains from the private sector and the public sector to come together in the room to get them to commit this amount of 1.4 billion US dollars. And that was why we were impressed.
Yep. But the other thing at that time, obviously, Dato Sri is 1MDB, right? So I just want to know, how was the discussion in cabinet at that time?
Yeah, in cabinet on 1MDB, when it was discussed, everybody had said, this is an issue that needs to be dealt with. But then the auditors came out and said, Deloitte in the time, they came out and said it was all okay. But we never really saw it because it's not publicly listed. None of us had access to the data. I have never seen the P&L of 1MDB, nor did we see a cash flow. None of us have access to that. But we only know from Deloitte that it was okay in the beginning. But of course, when it became problem, and this was the issue, then everybody keep quiet lah. But when you don't have access to the data, you rely on the auditors that needs to do it. But Dato Sri Najib said it was okay. And because we didn't have the data to show it's not publicly listed, it was a problem. And I believe without the 1MDB and SRC thing, Dato Sri Najib would have become one of the best prime ministers of this country, in my view. And that is his Achilles heel. You know, so I think those issues here, he was on point. He was on strategy. He knew what we needed to do. He was totally focused on that. If you look very closely at the work that we did there in the first round, the first 3 years, it was totally focused on the ETP and GTP. And then after 2013, when the 1MDB flew over, he was already distracted. I could tell it. He was distracted because his attention was no longer on the matter of what we needed to do. There was an element of needing to make sure that the party will survive and they win the next election. So those things I never joined because I'm not a politician. I'm not a member of any political parties. I never joined any of their meetings. I have never been in any UMNO meeting. I've never been in any of their rally.
That was part of your conditions too, right?
My conditions. So I didn't know what was the inside story. But the issues were, to my mind, he would have made a great prime minister for Malaysia if not for that.
All right. So we will be taking a short break and we will be right back. So don't go anywhere.
Alright, welcome back to Overtime, part of Lebih Masa. And today we've started with our guest, Dato Sri Idris Jala. And we've discussed a few aspects of your life from your kampung in, what do you call that, Bario, all the way to your time as a cabinet minister. So I think we would like to ask, with all the experience you have in MNC, GLC, in government, your experience as being a Sarawakian from the rural area, what is the biggest challenge for the government today that the government needs to overcome? Today's government.
Yeah, today's government. I would say the good news is that our problem is not difficult to fix. And I would say very simply, everything begins with where's the money lah. That's the starting point. You got to find a way where the government find sources of revenue so that he can do many things. So if you look today, our tax ratio as percentage of GDP is very, very low. Still around 12%. All countries in Africa already at 16%. They're poorer than us. 16%. GST, another country is called VAT. In Tanzania is 19%. So we don't have, you see. So if we have the courage to implement GST and put it the same as ASEAN country, let's say 10%. We have more than enough money to do what we need to do on education, on public health, and all sorts of things we need to do. And so I think figuring that out is important. I like what the government is doing on subsidy rationalization, targeted subsidy. That's the second one. Those two things will generate the revenue needed. It's easy to make promises. You can make promises, but if you don't have the money, you cannot do lah. No money, no talk. No woman, no cry lah. So it's important to fix that first. So that's only two things. Number one, introduce GST in my view, bring it up to the same level of ASEAN countries. It's around 10%. They will give a tremendous revenue, rationalize the subsidy. Then you can say, what am I going to do? We can fix many things. We can improve our public health. We can improve education, etc. So many things we can do with it. But you can't fix all those things if you don't fix the money side of the equation. That's why I say we have so many low-hanging fruits. It's not difficult to do. And if you can fix all that PMX has to do is have the courage to do it. And to go and implement that, then I think you can do all the reforms as needed. Because I've read the Buku Jingga juga. I read the Yellow Book. I read all the promises being made. You haven't implemented many of those things. But the reality is you don't have the money to do it. And if you don't have the money to do it, you can't do it. But of course, there are things that does not need money. And I can see PMX is doing is announcing the tenure of Prime Minister to be reduced to 10. And there were things like, for example, the promise that the Prime Minister shouldn't be the Minister of Finance. And that does not need money. But it was already done during Muhyiddin's time. It was Ismail Sabri too. And so all that PMX need to do is to implement it. And he was the one who said it. Do it lah. And so that doesn't need money. So I would say today, the good news is Malaysia's problem is not difficult to fix. It's not intractable. And I think if we can fix that, that solves the problem. Let the other say the area of being a lot more united as a country. And we really need to laugh at ourselves. We kind of take things too seriously on small things to get excited. Cannot get excited over socks. Things like that, small things. I call them irritants in society. They exist. But we must accept the fact that little things are there to irritate us. And that's the rest of the world. Ada juga. But we shouldn't get too excited over little things. Focus on the big things. Learn from Sarawak. In Sarawak, we have no problem with small irritations that exist there. And we got no problem with all that. So we shouldn't get excited over little things. Try to learn and laugh at simple things like that. Have a sense of humor. Don't get things too seriously. Too sensitive. Laugh over certain things. Don't be too serious. So, I mean, that's not difficult to do. Again, it's a simple common sense. We don't like in a family. In a family, there are squabbles with the children. Memang ada lah. But if every little thing that there's differences, you now want to bring the big hammer to solve it, tak boleh lah. Relax lah.
So Dato Sri, how do you think Malaysians like us, like me, can participate actively to actually help shaping policies and of course for the government to hold accountable on certain things?
I think we should speak out. The more young people speak out, the more we can shape society lah. And that's today. There's no better time in any time in the history of Malaysia that people can speak more because of social media.
Right.
This is the time when opinions matter.
Yeah.
And because the media is available for you or anybody to express an opinion on it. It will take a long time. I would say Malaysia, my hope is Malaysia is a country in transition. It's not the change, the full change will not happen with the current generation of leaders, in my view. It's the future generation that will do it. But the future generation of leaders are folks that think very differently.
Yep.
Maybe the next generation will open the window for us to think a little different, open the door and look beyond our shores. Even businesses too. I still believe that we are too focused on domestic market.
Right.
I mean, the business people today don't quarrel over the little pond called Malaysia, like little farm here.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you look at products we produce, real products, I'm not talking about component parts. We produce a lot of component parts. Name products Malaysians produce that are sold internationally. Everything on this table is not produced here, you know. None of these produce here.
Right.
What are the things that we produce and we sell internationally? That is why South Korea broke out from middle income trap to high income.
Right.
All Swiss countries, Scandinavia, did exactly that. Finland,
Small countries, yeah?
small countries. Because if you rely on domestic market, you will never make it.
Right.
So we must look at the markets beyond our country. And the services area is not exportable. Tourism and all that is domestic.
Right. Right.
It's about products that we put out there. Services, if you include things like Netflix and others,
Right,
that part that's possible too. But I call that digital. But so, to my mind, the whole of the world of business in Malaysia has to wake up. Don't just blame government lah.
Yeah.
The government can do its part, but this has nothing to do with government.
Right. Right.
Businesses must figure out how can we win out there in the international market and become international champion. That's the future. That's why in my little work that we do in Pemandu, I have a small firm called Pemandu Associates. We're about 55 staff. I made sure that 70% of our revenue is overseas
Right.
because that's where real competition comes. We compete with BCG, McKinsey, and everybody else in overseas. Some days we win, some days we lose. But that's the way to do it. But the key here is that we in the private sector must learn to look beyond our shores.
Yeah.
Right.
But don't blame government lah.
Yeah.
And that's old school. Most businesses, including non-boomy companies, always saying the government crowding them out.
Right.
Come on, man, look beyond our shores. Find opportunities beyond. Don't worry about this small market here.
Yeah.
We should look beyond. And that's my challenge to the corporate world. We
Right.
should look beyond.
I mean, I think from my personal experience in government as well, we've dealt with many consultants and whatnot, and Pemandu can stand tall with
Thank
all
you.
the other international ones. I was not involved in selecting.
Yeah.
We went through the process, but my experience that they can do just as good, if not
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
because of the local context that you understand. But so now, Dato Sri, what are you focusing on? I mean, you so basically Pemandu also you're taking a step back, right? That was how
Correct.
GOI came about.
Right. Are you still on your sabbatical leave?
No. I came back from sabbatical
Okay.
leave. So when I came back, because I told them I had the freedom to do what you do, they did a better job than when I was there.
Right.
The results were better. I said, well, continue doing. Since you know how to do it. So both Aida and Rizwan did a marvelous job in running the firm. So it's fantastic. And Leon is deputy chairman running the show. And so they did many things that I didn't approve. For example, when I came back, they changed the entire office. They moved it from Sunway Putra to TTDI. I said, why are you changing office? This place is hip lah. The old place is lama punya orang lah.
Right.
So they moved the office. So many changes that they did. So today I've been lecturing at Harvard twice a year.
I see.
And in April I lecture at Harvard. The program is called the Harvard Ministerial Leadership Program. And so in April, we have ministers from around the world, finance and economic planning ministers there. In fact, Amir Hamza Azizan is attending our forthcoming
I see.
session in April. And KJ attended our session when he was Minister of Health. Yes, in September, we have all the ministers of health
Right.
and education. Dato Sri Zambri came to our session in last September as well. Previously, Lim Guan Eng also came to our session when he was Minister of Finance. So it was tremendous. Half of the lecturers are Harvard professors, and there are half people like me.
Right.
So we do that. I lectured once for a year. I was a visiting lecturer at Blavatnik School in Oxford as well. I enjoyed that, and I still do that. And I'm also pro-chancellor at Sunway University, and I do some of that stuff as well. So I do more of that, more because of sharing experience and for the next generation.
But you finally get to do what you wanted to do initially.
Correct you.
In a very long way.
Yeah, full circle.
Amazing.
Yeah, so I enjoy doing that. So I do. My wife and I have decided that we would join our church group to help married couples. So we journey with them. So we take them what you should do to improve your marriage. Those before they get married and the ones who are already married.
Right.
And so we journey with them. So there's no money involved in all this. This is all about giving back to society in small and big ways. So we bring couples to a hotel, maybe 11 couples. We talk with them about the challenges they have and how they are coping with it, what they could do differently. We serve tea for them. We do all sorts of things. And then the last session we had, we bring coffee and tea to them. There was this guy looking at me, wow, nice when a former cabinet minister serves coffee and tea. But it's nice, like you can do different things.
Right.
Doing flower arrangement for them,
Nice.
doing very different things.
Right.
So during the pandemic, I also learned how to build guitars.
Okay.
So I have made 15 guitars out of my own hands.
You
Okay.
built
Yeah. I built
That can be the new Malaysian product.
Actually, I sold one.
Okay.
I have big reluctance to sell them. The joke is that I said, if some crazy guys out there is pay crazy money for it, I will sell it.
Yeah.
So I posted it on my website under Reverb. And I call my store as Muddy Delta. It's blues version of Kuala Lumpur. And so I spent about 4,000 ringgit building that guitar. I posted it for $4,000 US.
Okay.
And Ozzy from Brisbane bought it.
Oh, okay. So
And
he
it-
doesn't know you as a
So I
pure
posted,
commercial.
So he bought it for 4,000 ringgit. That was the only guitar I posted there. The others I don't sell. So you can do, but I've never been to any classes on how to learn how to make guitars. I learned from YouTube.
Right.
I learned about soldering from YouTube because I got nothing to do during the pandemic.
Right.
Okay.
So my wife and I have a small orchard in Bentong. So I spend my time in Bentong doing that on weekend.
Yeah.
We have some durians and we have fish in the pond. We had good fun.
So what's your favorite guitar brand? Sorry.
Brand.
Yeah.
My favorite guitar brand is Fender Stratocaster. And, that I love, and I have many versions of them.
Why do you think that fella bought your guitar?
Because I told him, I had a very long story about how the
Okay.
guitar was built. I described exactly the type of pickup that I use. I said, this pickup is the same pickup that so and so use. This is a kind of sound. This is the wood that they return. Long story, marketing and sales. And so, the guy bought it. And I asked him, after he bought it, did he like it? He really liked it.
Oh,
So it wasn't just sales. I really liked the
they will
pickup.
buy the rights to
Yeah.
manufacture the guitar under your name.
It's very nice, actually. I must say that I kind of regretted it, but I know I can build it if I want to.
But Dato Sri, just to end this session, what are the evergreen musicians that you still listen to today? I mean, you mentioned some just at the beginning in USM in school.
Yeah.
But what are the ones that you're still listening until today? Or new ones?
I really like, I'm into blues. The old guys like the late B.B. King, Buddy Guy, all these Eric Clapton, those guys are in the blues scene. But Kelly Joe Phelps is a new guy that I've been listening to. He died a few years ago, but I had the opportunity to see him live in Brisbane at a Gold Coast event. And I also listened to this guy called, latest one is Brothers Landreth, and a guitarist called Ariel Posen. These are very rare musicians. But if you listen to them, I'm sure you like them. The guys play slide guitars on a different open tuning, but it's incredibly exquisite. The way they control the sound, it's fantastic. So I listen to some of those guys, very rare musicians. But I do believe those guys are going to make it big at some point. Brothers Landreth, and then Ariel Posen.
Right.
Fantastic guitars. And that guitar, the guy also made his own version of the guitar. And I looked at his guitar. If you buy his guitar, signature guitar, Ariel Posen, it is $6,000 US.
Wow.
A little bit more expensive than mine.
Just a little bit. Not bad. All right. So thank you so much, Dato Sri, for your time.
Thank you.
We're so excited
And being
to
our
be
first guest. So our target is to eventually bring Donald Trump to the show.
Wow. That's
You're the first, right? You'll be the first, right?
Yeah.
And somehow we're also venturing outside because we used to, do it in Bahasa Melayu.
Yeah.
So, first time, so mana tahu.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you very much for sharing your experience.
Thank you.
All right. So for all of our new viewers, our new listeners, if you're here because this is in English, let us know right in the comments. Once again, don't forget to subscribe, like us in all the social media platforms, and share this, of course. And I've really enjoyed this episode. So with that, that's all the overtime that we have. My name is Nani Roslan.
And I'm Nazmi.
Bye, everyone.